Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 191. I keep meaning to record earlier, and it never happens. Hey, what was I doing recently? Kat and I watched The Incredibles. She put on The Incredibles for us the other day, and because she was in the mood. She was in the mood for what, I don't know why. She was like, I want to watch The Incredibles. So I haven't seen that movie in a bit. I guess maybe because she's in like an old Pixar mood. But she put it on, and it's also a movie that, much like Toy Story, I haven't seen in a bit. And funny enough, I think that rewatching Toy Story gave me a bigger appreciation for it than rewatching The Incredibles. Toy Story, like, I noticed all these new little details, and I think I was able to appreciate how clever a lot of the humor was. With The Incredibles, it was more just a film I always kind of knew that I knew was very good, and rewatching it was just a reminder. It was a reaffirmation that, yeah, this is a really good movie. This is still a really good movie. I think the way that it's aged visually is quite interesting. It was the first film that Pixar did where it really came across like, oh, they figured out how to do people now. They figured out how to take the... What would you call it? Like, I guess the basics, the fundamentals of character design, and apply them to CG. There's some quote from... I don't know, remember if it's a Pixar animator or a Disney animator or something. That's like the first thing that happens when you go to 3D is you forget every lesson you learned in 2D. Also, funny enough, something that applies very strongly to video games. I always think about an almost identical quote, or I don't know if it's like a story from the development of Mega Man X7. Where that was going to be the first 3D Mega Man game, or the first one where they could do 3D graphics. That wasn't, I guess, after Legends. It was the first X game that was going to be in 3D, right? Legends was always conceptualized as a fully 3D game, but this is X7 was the first one that was going to be in 3D. Can you tell that I need to like take a nap? It's a great time to start recording. And one of the artists for X7 said, yeah, there was this kind of feeling that we just got this idea in our heads that it shaped the whole project, and for some reason no one ever questioned it or really realized it until afterwards, which is that because we could do 3D graphics, we also needed to have a Z-axis. Thus, the terrible 3D segments from X7, where the gameplay completely falls apart because it's not designed around that at all. The Incredibles, but that's a tangent. But but I digest. The Incredibles was where they were like, I can see the trouble with like, how do you model and light a character model to look appealing and in 3D. You can sort of tell that the early like the humans in Toy Story, for instance, they were a little like, I don't know, mushy. They look kind of like, they look more like potatoes than Mr. Potato Head does. And eventually, by the time of The Incredibles, they realized that you can actually just do more exaggerated shapes. You can just apply the same logic and the same principles of shape language to three-dimensional characters, and, just keep in mind the way that you frame them on screen. And you can do really great looking stuff. I saw The Incredibles described one time as almost timeless looking due to its stylization. And I would agree with that. Some parts of the movie look really good, and I think still hold up pretty well. Obviously, they don't compare to... Oh god, am I going to say this? For some reason, the first movie I thought of was Wish. I don't know why Wish. I think Wish is like, for some reason, Wish is now, it's like my bottom standard. It's my bare minimum for how good I expect a CG movie to look. And The Incredibles doesn't quite meet that. It's not quite at that level of polish yet. But I think that you could easily show it to someone, and there's a couple shots where you could tell like the materials are a little too shiny, and there's a mildly, I'd almost say plastic, but really it's a lot closer to clay quality with some of the visuals, which in many respects it looks fine. And actually, like, all the main characters look really good, but some of the side characters look a little lumpier and a little weirder. It looks really good where it counts. Something else that I guess I never I never really processed it when I watched the movie as a kid, but the setup, I almost said the inciting incident, but really the setup to the film, man, that opening sequence is so good to The Incredibles. What a great paced movie. What an immaculately paced film. That script is so tight. It wastes no time. Every scene has like the proper, it moves just as fast as it needs to. There's just enough like excitement and motion and stillness and moments for it to just the scene to just breathe. I really like how quiet it is, and how much room there is in the soundscape, and it makes the big action sequences with all the music and the sound effects feel really big. But then there's these much more sparse sequences that really kind of draw you into the world of the movie and make it feel a lot more believable. Just tons of stuff, like so much of the movie. Like, I love the home life stuff in there, the scenes of Mr. Incredible in his office and stuff, when they're at dinner and they're just letting a dialogue scene play out. And it feels really grounded. It feels really grounded in the way that it's framed and paced and edited, and the way that the sound is treated. What a really cool, I don't know, handling of atmosphere. But anyway, I got sidetracked. The opening sequence that kind of sets off the rest of the movie, it sort of informs the rest of the movie, explaining why superheroes fell to the wayside. This big, you actually see that Mr. Incredible was at the center of this incident that caused a bunch of legal shock waves that changed how superheroes fit into society and how they had to get regulated. And it's so interesting to me that it all hinges on him saving someone who was trying to commit suicide, and in the process breaking a bunch of his bones and injuring him and costing him a ton in medical expenses, and honestly kind of killing the vibe, right? Like, I think if that happens to you, you're like, man, I'm not even in the mood to kill myself anymore. So at that point, he's just got to deal with all this medical debt. And it's such an interesting choice for a family film to make a key part of that about suicide. Like, I kind of understood it. Like, I didn't understand as a kid why he was jumping. The concept of suicide was still not something I really in my world. But the way they phrase it as he's saving someone who didn't want to be saved, which was an odd concept as a kid. And obviously he's doing something that he thinks is correct. He's saving a life, and obviously you shouldn't kill yourself. But it's this weird situation where like, I don't know. Like, I feel like I feel like anyone would want to save someone in that position. Anybody would want to save somebody from killing themselves. But this intersection of the circumstance and the law resulted in Mr. Incredible like legally being in the wrong, which is such an odd. Like, I feel like this most recent rewatch was the first time I really understood the cause and effect of why superheroes are an obscure thing at the time the movie takes place. That was very funny to like fully grasp. Also, just certain foreshadowing things that I never picked up on as a kid because I did not have as good of a memory. Yeah, I think plot-wise, The Incredibles still holds up extremely well. There's certain ways. Again, you know what else with visually is you can tell it's a little shoddy with the hair and cloth physics. They still look a little weird. But other than that, great movie. Great film. Hey, you know what else looks visually shoddy? We had no questions last time. So I'm going to talk about the Deus Ex Remaster. Oh boy. So a few days ago at, I believe, the PlayStation State of Play, there was a remaster of Deus Ex announced. And I saw that and I went, whoa, that sounds awesome. I love Deus Ex. That's like one of the best games of all time. A remaster is perfect because if you want to play Deus Ex nowadays, you can buy it for very cheap. It's like $6 on Steam right now, on sale. But really, if you want to play it, you kind of got to play it modded just to bring. I would recommend. So like when my friend Prox streamed Deus Ex, I recommended him to use the same mod that I did, which is I believe it's called the Community Update mod, which mainly it has no real gameplay changes. I think there's optional gameplay changes, but by default it is just quality of life features such as bringing the game up to modern support for modern aspect ratios, some more graphics options and stuff like that, and bug fixes, namely fixes to bugs in dialogue sequences, which are very, kind of important to Deus Ex, a game with phenomenal writing. And it's not that hard to get the whole thing set up, but it is a hurdle, And in my mind, it's really nice, just the idea to get a version of Deus Ex that is just a altogether complete package that just takes that one layer of work out of it, because some people just don't want to deal with that. You might think that's silly. I think it's a little silly, but at the same time, I also understand that I'm a bit of a freak. So immediately I was really happy with that, just based on title alone and assuming that that's what that was going to be. And then I watched the trailer and I went, oh, okay. So that's how they're remastering it. So when you hear the words Deus Ex Remastered, the other name you want to hear along with it is Night Dive. And, we're actually going to talk about Night Dive in a second. They're kind of the best in the business at the moment in terms of porting old games, specifically old PC games, and really doing them a lot of justice, putting a lot of care into the product, and making really, I don't know, the Criterion Collection tier, Blu-ray release, tier of for old games. Well, Night Dive is not attached to this project. It's Aspyr. Aspyr, who you might know from being the ones to do the recent Tomb Raider 1 through 3 remaster, which I heard generally good, okay things about. Also, that remaster of Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront 2, I believe, that was so bad that I think it was one of those cases where it was so bad that it got the player numbers to spike on the original version. Like, they fucked that thing up. They have also been working on a remaster / what is it? Is it hang on, Aspire KOTOR. They've been working on a supposed remake of Knights of the Old Republic, which that thing is vaporware. That thing is not coming out. I don't think anyone believes that that's coming out. So they've got a bit of a shoddy history. But they are, I guess, kind of buddy with IDOS, as you might surmise. I'm imagining that it's the relationship is for. I believe the relationship is between them and IDOS, which you might surmise from the Tomb Raider remaster collection. So they got them to do a Deus Ex Remaster, and it feels like legitimately Silent Hill HD collection tier, which is on a purely objective level. Yes, the game technically looks better. Big emphasis on technically, and I mean technically very literally. So if you watch the trailer, essentially what they've done is create a ton of new retexture the entire game with new high quality textures. And actually, there were some people calling this lazy looking. Maybe to some extent. I would say more careless than lazy. Because if you pay attention to the screenshots and stuff and the footage, they actually went through the trouble of creating new normal maps to match the new textures. The normal maps being, if you're not familiar, it's like an extra graphical layer on top of the texture that basically tells the game's lighting engine how to light a certain visual part of the game. That's how it's like a visual trick. That's how a lot of depth is depth and wear and detail is implied on tons of textures in games that you've played. If you've ever played a game where you're walking on, say, a cobblestone street and it looks like it has real depth, and you can see the cracks in the grouting between the cobblestones, but then you move the camera down to be more level with the ground, and you notice that it's actually just a completely flat plane, and you're like, that looks weird. And then you kind of like tip it forward and backwards to see suddenly, now it looks like it has depth, but then I make it more level and it doesn't. Really weird. It's just a flat plane. That's because of normal maps. It is just a flat plane, but there is extra lighting information that's like in the shape of all of that little detail and stuff to give the illusion. Well, I don't know if exactly the illusion. Well, it's the illusion of depth without actually having to model depth, which would be a lot more like graphically intensive to act. It requires way more hand done like topography and stuff like that, and probably makes the game run worse. It's just honestly easier and more efficient to do normal maps and stuff like that. So they've actually gone in and created new normals for this stuff, for all the new high resolution textures. Like you can see it on the footage of the Liberty Island mission at the beginning of the game, where the tiles on the ground now have this new high-res texture, and the lighting actually kind of more realistically bounces off of the, bounces and reflects and casts shadows on the little spaces in between the tiles and stuff. And this is all over the game. They've actually put in a fair amount of work, it seems. I don't know if you can just AI generate that stuff nowadays, but it seems like they've actually put in the work to do that. The problem, I think a lot of people have been focusing on the textures and stuff and saying that that's the problem with the way the game looks. And I think that's actually a misattribution. I think it's a what is a prognosis? Which one is that? Prognosis. The likely course of a disease or ailment. A forecast of the... Oh, okay. It's like a prediction. I thought a prognosis is when your gnosis goes 7 minutes long and has 5 different genres that it flips through. It's a misdiagnosis of the issue, in my opinion. Like, at first, I agreed with the memes, the sentiment about it looks like an HD Minecraft texture pack, like realistic cow texture image. I think there's a similar thing actually going on there. Actually, no, wait, hang on. That is kind of a good comparison. The problem is not the texture. The textures look great. The problem is where the textures are placed. There's two things. Number one is that it appears that none of the actual topography of the environment has been changed. There are new character models that are higher fidelity, although those have different problems. But none of the actual environments have changed in terms of poly count or, topography at all. Which means that you are taking much higher resolution textures and just slapping them on like cardboard boxes. And it just inherently looks a little anachronistic. It looks like Minecraft HD cow. The other big problem is the lighting. The lighting is the real culprit here. The new lighting engine, I'm assuming that's what's going on, is that it's some kind of new engine. So you have to understand that when Deus Ex came out in 2000, it was not considered a good-looking game. That's kind of lost on us now because we just see an old game and every old game kind of looks like, oh yeah, you don't expect it to look that good. So nowadays, I think it's actually aged fine because it's not like super duper ugly, and it's the effect is really diminished. At the time, it was like, this looks like a game from 1997. This looks like Quake 2. This looks like Unreal. Okay, maybe not that. Maybe Unreal 2. Deus Ex was never considered a great-looking game. It survived based on the strength of its gameplay and its story. But what this has really made me appreciate was the original game's art direction. When you look at... There's a great post by Wario64 that just grabs a bunch of... I think it's probably from a website or something. It looks like it's from the official website. But I'm just looking at the Wario64 Blue Sky post where they are just dropping the side-by-side screenshot comparisons. And there's this one, like the very first one is the perfect illustration. I will link this thread below if you're curious. It's just a scene of one of the big walker mechs standing in a courtyard with a building behind it with some lights on it. And in the original screenshot, it's dark. It is really dark. In fact, the ground is entirely covered in shadow, save for where in the background there are a couple of floodlights explicitly shining down on them. And even that light, it might be the texture or the color of the light itself or some mix of the two. That light is this odd, like, at least from my, maybe it looks a little different if you're not seeing it through a super intense blue light filter, but it's got this kind of weird like bluish green hue to it. Like it looks a little otherworldly and a little eerie, you know? There, and you're like, the one thing I get from this screenshot is, man, this game is dark. And that's perfect. And because Deus Ex is thematically and literally about shadows. It's about shadowy secret organizations pulling the strings behind the scenes. It's about delving into mysteries. The gameplay has tons of stealth elements where you are quite literally hiding from enemies. So much thematically and gameplay wise this is one of the reasons Deus Ex is so cool, is how like every part of the game like synergizes with each other. Like everything kind of reinforces. It's such a holistic feeling game, from the game, like the gameplay and the story, and even looking at it now, the visuals all mesh together. That's one of the reasons it creates such a strong impression, is that like the gameplay, the story, and the vision, every element of it is really focused on immersing you in the ideas that it wants to explore. And it's a really striking scene, this original screenshot. There's an intense atmosphere. There's these lights on the top of the building behind it, and they're not very powerful. They only kind of illuminate the area right around them, and then they just vanish. It just everything else is swallowed up by darkness. In the remake, completely blown out. Everything is brighter. Those lights in the background, now they're just casting across like half the rooftop. The ground, which in the original is just like absolutely consumed by shadow, bright, almost fully illuminated. Those spotlights that cast this eerie glow in the background of the underneath of this building, of like whatever this awning is, barely contrasts at all. The eye just wanders wherever. There's nothing to really grab your attention here. It's funny, like even in this one random screenshot of an area from the original game, there is like a strong visual language, and your eye is drawn to certain, like the big red stripe on the visor of the walker is really attention grabbing because it's so bright, in contrast to how dark everything around it is. It's almost like the game uses light and shadow to kind of signal the player about stuff. It's almost like, oh, hey, you should look at this giant, deadly, dangerous mech. It has a big, bright red, contrasty visor. And every single screenshot is like this. Just everything is completely blown out. Why is everything so bright? Why is everything so bright? All of the lights are so powerful. They're not only brighter at their like epicenter, they also have such a long reach. They emanate so far, and it completely destroys any atmosphere. They have a side-by-side of the main character, JC Denton, in the original and the remake. And I don't usually use the terminology like this that what the kids do. But the only words that I could think of to describe this is total aura obliteration. That's all I could think of. And I was left wondering, why does he look so much less cool? Why does he look so much less cool in the remaster? And again, as before, he's so fucking bright. Like, that whole thing I was just talking about with the idea of emerging, like dipping into and out of the shadows. JC's face, in addition to just the natural shading on him that's created by the game's lighting engine in the original, he also literally has shadows textured into his face. Like the back of his face, the back of it, you can hardly tell where his like slicked back black hair begins and where the shadow begins. His face just kind of like appears, this highly contrasty pale face out of the shadows. It looks like he is literally melting into the darkness at all times. Deus Ex is a game that takes place almost entirely at night. In fact, you know that shit is getting real when you play a mission where like the sun is starting to come up in the very far distance. You can just see like the very beginning of the sunrise, and you're like, oh shit, this feels like near the end of the game. And that's like the third to last mission or something. And in the remake, he's so bright. For some reason, his jacket is much more, because instead of like the dark black, almost navy, if anything, maybe navy blue, that's like the brightest you could even call it. In the remaster, it's like brown. There's so much light on it. It looks brown. There is this like some red lights shining on him from the side that makes him even brighter. And he doesn't look like he's like, the shadows on his face, I can tell exactly like, I can see exactly where his hair is. The shadows on his face are so much subtler, and there's so much more of his skin tone instead of these really powerful, intense, contrasty shadows. All gone. Also, for some reason, and I don't know if this is just in this screenshot and maybe in the actual remaster it looks correct, but his eyes don't glow. What? His eyes are not glowing. His pupils don't glow. In the original, like, JC is a cyborg, and he has cybernetically enhanced vision. He has the popular line, "My vision is augmented," that he says whenever anyone asks him about his glowy eyes, because his pupils have this bright green glow to them, and you can see it even behind his sunglasses. It's like a cool visual for his character that it allows him to wear, like, that's literally the explanation for why he wears sunglasses at night, is because it doesn't matter, because his eyes can see just fine through them, because his vision is augmented. In the remaster, you can't see his glowy eyes. You cannot see his glowy eyes. I don't know why. It's one of the most memed on lines in the original game. My vision is augmented. The official Deus Ex subreddit, the tag for the subreddit is "Our vision is augmented." That's the official sub. His vision is not augmented in the remaster. What the hell? What is going on here? Oh, good lord. Some of the other character models just look really off. The next screenshot is the leader of the, I don't know. There's a million acronyms for different groups in this game. The leader of the terrorist organization from the beginning of the game, who you meet at the top of the Statue of Liberty. Again, in the original, almost completely in the shadow. Like, everything is black except for his character model. He is also black, but as he's like an African American. But the world around him is totally shadowy. Which, again, is kind of a cool visual. He's like in this world of darkness. Whoa, vampire? And in the remaster, what else? Of course, completely blown out, super bright. But also a bunch of weird stuff going on. Like, okay, for some reason, he's super shiny. And not just his, like, tech shirt or whatever he's wearing, which was sort of just, its materials were kind of implied in the original. Now it's, like, very explicitly sculpted. He has, like breastplates. They're super shiny, which, again, it looks very bright. For like the highlights are so bright. For some reason, his head, it's like he's been applying baby oil to his face, because his head and his face are super shiny. Really odd. A lot of things in the game have this overly shiny material for some reason. And again, I don't think the actual like polygon count has been updated for most of these, or if it has, there's not enough, like, it's not enough detail. Like, oh god, there's this really bad screenshot. Let me find it. It's it's in one of the offices. I think it's in, is this from France? I don't remember where this is in the game. But it's JC is holding, it's when he's holding a crowbar and looking at the back of a guard's head wearing a helmet. And the helmet is so shiny. There is like no amount of realistic wear on it. It's just a shiny, it is quite, I can see someone opening it in Blender and messing with the material and being like, yeah, it's like shiny, but it's got a little like rough, diffusion on it. And it's so bad looking. It's so outdated. It looks like a Gmod thing from 2012 that an amateur would put together, not a professional company putting out a professional product. This is also a great screenshot to get a sense for the weird differences, like the weird mismatch between the textures and the proportions of everything in the world. Like, man, that door is huge. The ceiling is super high. The desk is super. There's a ton of space in this room for no reason. The tiles are gigantic on the floor. Stuff that you wouldn't really notice in the original. Partially probably just because of how much darker I'm imagining it is. But also because, everything just looks a little crummier in general. One of the benefits of the original is that it had this very simple lighting engine, a very basic lighting engine for the time, but they didn't really have access to these elaborate normal maps. That was a lot harder to do. So much of the detail was actually painted in the textures. And so it has it creates an aesthetic where you can understand like what the artists were going for. And once you get into it, it looks, everything kind of flows together visually, where you're like, okay, yeah, there's like, man, it's so weird. It feels like there's more detail on the old models just because I can see the literal, like, where they painted in the rust on the mechs limbs and stuff like that, where they painted in the scratches, in the textures, and the wear on the emblem on its front. And in the remaster, a lot of that stuff is supposedly being handled by like normal map stuff, and it just doesn't look as striking. It's not detailed enough to make up for it. Just a total, obliteration. A total obliteration of the original game's art style. Now, Tomb Raider, I believe, also had these graphical updates, but I have heard that you can turn them off and play with the original graphics. And hopefully that's an option here. There was some article that was like, do we really need a Deus Ex Remaster? And I would say in some regards no, but in others it's appreciated. And the reason I say that is mainly because of accessibility. One is, okay, I'm hoping to God this at least has some bug fixes. Like, please tell me that there's some bug fixes in this. and it's got to support modern aspect ratios and stuff like that. I'm hoping. But really accessibility in the sense that there's going to be a console port. Like, you're going to be able to play Deus Ex on a Switch, and that's kind of crazy. Now, Deus Ex is technically available on PSN and maybe Game Pass, I'm not sure. But it's not it's not really ideal. It's the PlayStation the PS2 port of Deus Ex, which was called The Conspiracy. The big problem with the PS2 port is I believe it's mostly faithful to the original. Like, it follows the same plot and all that, but the limitations of the PS2 disk space meant that a lot of that game had to get crunched down. There's a lot more loading screens. I don't think it looks that much worse. But there's definitely a lot more performance issues and compromises for the sake of fitting it onto a disc. I think that some areas are also redone to make them... Oh yeah, the maps are much smaller. Which, I mean, part of that's a real drag on the Deus Ex experience, in my opinion. So getting an honest-to-God version of real original Deus Ex playable on consoles, and more consoles than ever before, is a good thing in my book. As long as the graphical update is optional, it feels like a big wasted effort and a very careless interpretation of the original game's art style, which bums me out. And I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's a rush job or if it was just mismanaged or something. Maybe it was all the above. But yeah. I'll settle for it, but I'm not that happy about it. If you have not played Deus Ex and you don't have access to, like, honestly, even like a really rudimentary laptop these days can run Deus Ex on Steam. If all you've got is, for a gaming device, is a console, play this fucking game. Play this game and turn those remastered graphics off. It's one of the best games of all time. Incredibly interesting. If you just allow yourself to immerse yourself in the world and the vibe, and it's one of those, it's an immersive sim, so it's the type of game where the more you put into it, the more you get out. So just experimenting and messing around with what's possible in every situation and how you can manipulate NPC behaviors and stuff like that, and how all the different augments and stuff work. Explore a ton, try to find different ways to finish missions. One of the coolest games ever made. You gotta play it. And speaking of remasters, Blood Refreshed Supply. So when I first saw this morning, my first thought was, oh, is this an update to Fresh Supply? Like a title update? Ultra Blood Fresh Supply. Yes and no. So, Blood Fresh Supply is the original... Sorry, not the original. It's a little weird. So, Blood is a game with a weird publication history. It came out on DOS initially. Never got ported to anything else. And then Blood 2 came out and flopped super bad because it was unfinished. Because GT Interactive made them push the game out early. and the Blood IP basically was sitting dormant inside the Atari vaults for forever, and then a few years ago they finally did something with it with Fresh Supply. So there's this weird combination of like, how do you play Blood? Well, there's the official way via Fresh Supply, and then there are the fan-created... they're not source ports, they are recreations. I'm going to get to that in a second. Oh, I did not grab the right post that I wanted. They're not fan ports. They're not source ports. They are recreations of the original game. Blah blah blah. Fresh Supply is an official recreation of Blood. It's very weird that you have to talk about it like that, but it's the official port for modern systems. Namely, only PC. It's only been on PC. When Fresh Supply came out, it was a little bit shoddy. It did not perform that as well as it maybe should. It didn't play as well as it should. And Night Dive, to their credit, because they do legitimately care, supported the game for a while and dropped a bunch of updates over the course of a year and actually improved the experience quite a bit from the original release. And then... who owned it at that point? On High, Warner Brothers or Atari or whoever the fuck owns it. I believe it was Atari. Was like, nah, we don't want to pay you to update Blood anymore. We don't care. That's enough. So Fresh Supply has been sitting in this state for the longest time, where it's not bad. It's a perfectly good way to play the game. But I wouldn't quite recommend it. It's not my favorite way. If you just want the easy experience, it's spring for it. It has built-in support for mods. It has a mod loader. Not every mod is for Blood is necessarily going to be compatible with Fresh Supply, because it's sort of its own version of the game. But it is explicitly compatible with Death Wish, and hey, what more do you need besides being able to play Death Wish? One of the best mods ever made. So that's kind of been the state of the game for a while. And of course, I'm always championing something to be done with Blood. That's one of my dream... You know how people are like, I want Capcom to do something with Darkstalkers. That's me. That's me with Blood. I love Blood so much. It's one of my favorite games of all time. It's one of the best shooters of the 90s. And just today, a new version of Fresh Supply has been announced. Refreshed Supply. Okay, so I paused for 1 second because I wanted to get all my facts straight. And I was reminded of the fact that there's like 3 different versions of Atari, and they're all different companies. So Atari Games Corporation was formed in 1985. No. Yeah, 1985. And then it was Midway Games West, and then in 2003 it was transferred. The coin-operated game division of Atari Inc. was transferred by its owner Warner Communications to a joint venture with Namco. It's some like merger transferred name nonsense. So they've always been owned by Warner Brothers. I guess it's just man, I can't wait to take a nap after this. And I'm going to say that I'm going to talk for like 2 more hours. So I'm not sure what has been the spearhead for making a new version of Blood, but I'm guessing that it has come from within Night Dive's own ranks, because I have a strong feeling that they were a lot more passionate about it than they were allowed to express or were allowed to actually show in the form of work. However, with this new chance to make an update to Blood, an official update to Blood, also comes some Warner Brothers compromises. So, Refreshed Supply is not an upgrade or even a DLC to Fresh Supply. It is a separate game with a separate Steam listing. We'll talk about that in a second too. It seems that all of the features that it's adding compared to just Fresh Supply are it's I'm not exactly sure. I'm assuming it's just high resolution support, unlocked frame rates, yada yada, modding support, a lot of stuff that's in Fresh Supply. I imagine most of the updates are under the hood. A lot of the updates are under the hood, which is a good thing. But apparently there is some extra stuff that wasn't really included in the store page or the trailer that they put out. And that was detailed by the CEO. That's his title, right? The studio head of Night Dive, Stephen Kick, who was on Blue Sky and was answering some questions about the project, about this new version. So, I should mention that the one thing that Refresh Supply, I think is actually a pretty big boon, is that it comes packaged with Death Wish and a different fan mod called Marrow, which I hadn't heard of. Apparently it is a mod specifically for Fresh Supply, and this is building off of that, so it's all compatible, I suppose. So he confirmed that the creators of both mods were compensated. So one, they were compensated for their mods being included in the official package, and also compensated to, in his words, create new content. Oh, new content. He continues, the plan is to have them form the base of a new team that will create new expansions for other classic Night Dive titles games. Huh. Interesting. This is a very interesting direction for the company to go in. Night Dive, like I said, has always kind of been just the porting remastering house, and everyone was perfectly happy with them doing that. But if they're going to provide some sort of new content, I actually quite like the idea of getting very respected modders and fan creators from the community to make new content and expansions to add value to existing games that they've already remastered and re-released and reported. And also to add on to stuff for new stuff that they're making, like this Refreshed Supply. So that's really interesting. Also, if you look up the guy who made Marrow, he is a fellow by the name of Damien Azriel, and he has an update from January 1st of 2025 where he basically goes into detail about how he's finished the first episode of Marrow, and he's working on the second one, and how progress on the second one is being stalled, or it's slow going because he got laid off from his job, and he was just trying to find work, and he's now to find out that he is, I guess, being hired by Night Dive to make to make expansions for shooters is kind of cool and a little bit heartwarming. So I kind of like that. There's also a couple of features in this new update that were not included for some reason. Stephen Kick details he just says the vault, which I imagine is going to be similar to the one that was included in the Doom 1+2 release from fairly recently. That was just a collection of assets from the game and beta stuff and things from different builds along with some commentary and some context for what they were. That's really cool, and I love looking through that library. Getting that for Blood sounds really cool. I'd love to see that. Blood has a lot of really interesting content from its betas. The game changed a lot over its development, and there were a lot of ideas that got toyed around with. Like, did you know that the crazy-looking monster demon thing in the UI was originally going to be an alternate form for Caleb? It was going to be like a powered-up form, like an install, and that was never used. So they just took they never went with that, so they took that sprite and used it in the HUD. And then later in one of the official expansions, they turned that into an enemy. Anyway, also remade cinematics. That's fun. That's pretty cool. I'm assuming that that's going to be an option and that you don't have to use them, and that you can watch the original wonderfully primitive looking CG cutscenes from 1997. Also, they found the original source code. Huh? I need more details on that, dude. Did he reply to anyone? Nope. No one has asked him about the source code thing. If you don't know why this is a big deal, the source code for Blood is essentially lost. It is lost to time. It's one of the reasons that the game has been difficult to proliferate and port, because no one knows where the source code is, and so any version of the game that you play that is not the literal DOS exe is a fan-made recreation of the game's code. The reason that something like Doom is on you can run Doom on anything. You can make a version of Doom that's compatible with like any software, any operating system. You can run it on a pregnancy test. That's because the source code for Doom has been open source since 1996 when Quake came out. That was their policy, is they would release the source code for their engine whenever they came out with the next one. And so you can literally download the source code for Doom and look at it. You can open it up in a text editor and read the source code that John Carmack wrote in 1993. It's very cool. And using that, it's a lot easier for people to... access to that makes it a lot easier for people to create versions of Doom, or I should say basically like wraparound engines for Doom, source ports that you can run Doom's files through to just make it compatible with like anything. Any modern operating system. It's the easiest... It's one of the easiest things to port ever. You literally have access to the source code. That's never existed for Blood. So what a lot of people mistakenly call source ports, things like NBlood or Blood GX? Yeah, that's the other one. Those are just people taking the assets and the levels and the map files and stuff and writing new code, like essentially writing a new engine compatible with, again, modern operating systems. Honestly, a lot of it is actually based off of source ports of Duke Nukem 3D, because they're both build engine games. So a lot of them are built off that. For my money, my favorite personally is N-Blood. I think that it plays the best and it looks the best and has the fewest visual weirdnesses that Fresh Supply has. Hopefully, if Refreshed Supply smooths some of those things out, that'll be great. I am so curious as to what happened with the source code. Where did they find it? Where was it? Who had it? Why did it take so long? What are they doing with it? Hopefully making it more accurate. Hopefully this could now become the most accurate version of Blood, which would be awesome. So two notes before I move on. The big benefit of this additional version is that now we have it's going to be on console for the first time. Blood on console for the first time. Kind of like the same thing with what's cool about the Deus Ex Remaster. Blood has never been available on anything other than PCs. So that's cool. And if you've never played it and you want to play it and you've got a console, it's an awesome game. Again, one of the best shooters of the 90s. But that comes with the caveat that Warner Brothers was, I'm sure it was we don't know, but I am almost certain that it had to do with Monolith shutting down and the rights being weird, and Warner Brothers is like, okay, but the only way that you can make a new update is if it's a new thing. It's got to be a new title with new copyright. And they said, okay, fine. We'll do it. But I'm assuming another Warner Brothers mandate is that it can't just be a free update. See, the greatest thing is when it's just a free update if you already own the original, if you already own Fresh Supply. But because this has to be a totally separate thing, no. It must be a separate new purchase, and it's $30. Except, I'm going to tell you guys about a little secret. So, if you already own Fresh Supply, Refreshed Supply is only $10. It drops from $30 to $10. And it's you can think of it as like a DLC upgrade. And right now, Fresh Supply is on sale for $2. So you can get Blood for $12. And even when Fresh Supply isn't on sale, the regular price is $10. So even if neither of them are on sale, you can get Refreshed Supply essentially for $20 instead of the full $30. The $30 price tag is just there if you're a sucker. Why? Why do they do it like this? I don't know. WB decides the pricing. Ask them. Ask the brilliant minds at WB. Unless, of course, you are a console player, in which case you can't buy Fresh Supply. It's not available on consoles. Yeah, so if you're interested in playing it and you want to play Refreshed Supply, which might very well become the standard if you don't already own it, instead of paying $30, just pay $20. And please play Blood. It's awesome. Speaking of blood, how about that Saudi blood money? That's right. EA has been bought by Saudi Arabia. So, this is a weird one. This is not what That's not the headline that I expected to read when I woke up like yesterday, but it's the one that came across my screen. And it's really bizarre because it's sort of come out of nowhere. I think there were some rumblings about a potential, but there's always rumblings about a potential buyout. Oh, they're gonna buy. But EA has not been in, like, as far as I know, dire straits where I would have expected this to happen to Ubisoft before EA, because this isn't just a buyout. This is a leveraged buyout to private equity. And that's like its own subcategory. That's its own subset of trickery. So this is specifically, when I say Saudi Arabia, this is actually a couple groups. It's mainly 3 groups that they're being acquired by. And by the way, they're also going private. They will no longer be a public company. Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, the PIF, which is a government fund. It's a government institution. An organization called Silver Lake, and another investor group called Affinity Partners. Now, Silver Lake is headed by Jared Kushner, the, son-in-law or brother-in-law to Donald Trump. So there's lots of awesome stuff going on over here. So basically, what is a leveraged buyout? Well, I know the phrase leveraged buyout from a little guy called Company Man. I say he's a little guy. He's much bigger than me. Company Man is this awesome YouTube channel that's been making videos about companies for, probably like 7 or 8 years now. And every week he somehow manages to come up with a new interesting thing to talk about. One of his most common types of videos is, why did this company fail? And if you watch enough of these, you get very familiar with the concept of a leveraged buyout. So essentially what happens is these investment groups want to acquire a company, in this case EA. They need to pay the owners of EA a certain amount of money of whatever the evaluation of the company is. Maybe they don't have all of the money to cover that. So a portion of the funds are actually basically a loan. It's debt financing. In this case, the buyout is $55 billion total. $36 billion is being covered by the actual investment groups. The other $20 billion is coming from JP Morgan Chase. $20 billion of debt. And mind you, the way that these things tend to work is that debt isn't usually on the investors. It's actually on the company itself to essentially prove that it was worth that much money by paying it off. So you can think of this as EA is going to be $20 billion in debt. And the investors, the investment groups, also would like to see about $36 billion return on their investment. Now, who's to say what time span their expectations will work on? Do they want it in 5 years? I don't know. But the truth of the matter, the most one of the most common outcomes, and this is a really extreme example. There's an article here from The Verge, courtesy of Jay Peters, where they get a quote from a person named Mona Ibrahim, who is a former lead counsel at Epic Games. Wrote a post about this buyout on LinkedIn. She said, leveraged buyouts leverage debt, which usually means more layoffs, smaller budgets for growth, and fewer risks. For an industry that thrives on invention, this seems problematic. They reference another... This is the quote I was actually looking for. I'm so stupid I couldn't find the right quote. An analyst for Circana named Matt Piscatella writes, $20 billion of debt financing is a shockingly large number to have to service, while also transitioning from a public to private organizations and all the implications that has on the people that work in it. We've obviously never seen anything like this at this scale in the industry before. So, it's not that this is the biggest acquisition, because later in this article, immediately after this, they point to the Activision Blizzard acquisition by Microsoft, which was bigger. It was $68.7 billion compared to the $55 billion of this one. This is a little bit of an apples to oranges, or not quite apples to oranges, but it's a different enough situation that it's not like directly comparable, but honestly might be worse because of the amount of debt involved. And that's really the key difference, is the sheer amount of debt. $20 billion is a lot. And there aren't many comparisons that you can make. There are no comparisons to this type of deal in the gaming industry, and there's very few of anything in the broader entertainment industry. This, of course, the Activision merger resulted in tons of layoffs across the whole company, across all their divisions, and a lot of pains and not a lot of returns on it. We have spoken endlessly upon the failure of the Activision Blizzard acquisition to pay off for Microsoft. Definitely in the short term, and I don't know if the long term is looking much better. Essentially, to put my cards on the table, what I expect to come out of this EA buyout is that they will essentially collapse under the weight of paying off the debt in a little while and basically be stripped for parts. This is essentially this is like the private equity playbook. They acquire some company, force a massive amount of debt on it, incur none of the risk themselves, and basically just strip it for parts. And they have enough money that they can absorb losses when the gamble doesn't quite work out. They're total parasites. Now, you might be wondering, why? Why is this happening? Well, curiously enough, it seems that no one is really asking why EA would be interested in being bought out. Maybe the answer is obvious. They just want money. And to be honest, as far as we know right now, that seems like the most probable answer. They just wanted money. They just wanted to get a merger. Same reason Bobby Kotick was eager to do the Microsoft merger is that the lifespan of a successful CEO is to join the company, increase the value by some impressive amount, and then merge and then jump ship. And if you look at Andrew Wilson, current CEO of EA, that's, I guess, approximately what he's done. Now, what Kotick did for Activision was kind of absurd. I think Andrew Wilson just wants to fucking retire, man. He's been doing this for over 10 years. Probably wants to retire. and get a nice golden parachute. On the investor's end, obviously there are incentives to acquire big name brands and get them under your umbrella. Things like, the EA Sports branding and stuff like that. But I think especially this really ties into, I'm sorry we have to go here, but geopolitics. I made a meme a while ago when the tariff prices hit the Switch 2. And it was something like, gamers, when the politics are actual geopolitics and not like women and black people being in their games. Uh-oh. Wait, what? What? Wait, I have to care about politics? What? So, namely, this is part of a broader movement by Saudi Arabia to diversify their portfolio. Historically, Saudi Arabia has had a ton of value in their country, but most of it has come off of the oil industry, which is, well, mildly volatile. I'd say in one sense, having a lot of oil is like pretty cool, but it also, there's like this tweet of this girl talking about this kind of common experience, which is, I believe it's something along the lines of, when your male friend gives you that gray area sexual assault look before going in for a kiss. That's kind of like what the United States does when you've got a lot of oil. So it's a little like, it's a little bit volatile on the global stage. There's also the very significant movement in recent years from some large countries to move away from oil, such as China. China's on track to increase their green and independently sourced energy even more than they already have in the coming years. China's obviously a huge market with a ton of people that need a lot of energy, and they are trying to become more independent. So I think Saudi Arabia sees the writing on the wall, and their leadership is like, shit, we got to diversify so that we don't get left behind and left in the dust when no one wants to use oil anymore. I mean, people are always going to want to use oil, but the value of it might go down. So they have been diversifying, and one of the easiest ways to do that is in entertainment. So they're buying sports teams, which, make no mistake, are entertainment. They're buying fucking SNK so they can put Ronaldo in Fatal Fury. They are doing a bunch of entertainment things. They're hosting like concerts and comedy festivals and the Esports World Cup and all that. People call it sports washing. A lot of people think that it's just to improve their image, and like, yeah, I guess so. That is part of it. I honestly don't think a lot of people are really aware of Saudi Arabia's image, besides being the guys with all the oil. Like, they don't know how much slave labor and misogyny and what else do they do over there? Just like horrible treatment of citizens is codified into law over there. So some people have like a strong moral obligation to supporting anything with Saudi Arabia. And in some sense, I would like to have that as well. But also, I'm like, I can't ignore the irony of saying that and being an American who lives in America and pays taxes to the American government. Like, we've got concentration camps now, man. Like, I don't... I throw up my fucking hands. Everything feels fucked. I don't know. You just draw whatever line makes you feel better, I guess. So is this good for EA? Probably not. In fact, hang on. Let me look up something. EA layoffs. So news about. Okay, so the most recent stories are all. Hang on. Before. Let's say. Like a few days ago. Nine. We're gonna do some live investigation. Like 9/20/2025. Actually not seeing any. I'm not seeing any layoffs recently. Okay. This is definitely going to result in layoffs. Everything's going to result. I've been calling the contraction of the AAA games industry for a while now. It's not a bubble. I don't think it's accurate to call it a bubble. Maybe you could call it. Actually, no, it is a bubble. It is a bubble, but it's not popping. It's a big difference. It's not like a total instantaneous Black Tuesday collapse. It's a long, slow contraction. A little hole is punctured in the bubble, and it slowly contracts as it cannot support its own structure any longer. This, of course, coming off the heels of a very tough economy in the US right now. That's probably going to get worse until this all collapses in until the fucking country collapses in a year or two. So we're just kind of waiting that out. This is again another step. What did I say? I think the Ubisoft Tencent thing, that was the first knell. This is the next big one. This is EA. EA basically sold themselves out to a bunch of private equity, and thus began the breakdown, dissolving of the company, which is gonna trash a gajillion jobs in the process. How awesome. Hey, you want to wait, hang on. This was a thing too. I was about to talk about the fighting game community. Fucking Qiddiya. The Saudi Arabia dude, also the fucking, oh my god. What is Qiddiya? Let me look up. It's the city, a planned entertainment and tourism mega project. What the fuck is that? Saudi Arabia's Qiddiya fully acquires Evo organizers RTS. Crazy. There's gonna be an Evo in Saudi Arabia. They are the second biggest stakeholder for Evo now. So Jesus. This all started because I had a recent I want to talk. This is a totally different topic. I wanted to talk about a recent toe dip I had. It's kind of an annual thing where I try to enjoy Mortal Kombat X again, and I inevitably bounce off of it. It's kind of like Minecraft. I try to enjoy it every once in a while, and I just never get into it. It just never really clicks totally for me. At least not enough to turn my opinion on it. I have fun for a bit, and then I go, oh yeah, I remember it. I'm not that into this. I don't feel the drive or the spark or the inspiration to keep playing. And I always do this with MKX. Mainly because it's the one that I own. Dude, MK11's like $3 right now. That's crazy on Steam. But MKX is the one that I own. And it's the one that I feel like on paper would be the most interesting to me. I've talked before, like on my side channel, how I really hate the way MKX looks. I think it's a real low point artistically for the series. But gameplay wise, you'd think I like really fast paced fighting games with really crazy high power characters. And there's some really cool concepts. I mean, the roster in X is pretty cool. You got the Alien and the Predator and Jason and Leatherface. Like, those are cool guests. And there's a lot of really neat ideas. The variation system is a lot like the Moon system in Melty Blood. Like, there's a lot of interesting things that are like, I should play around with this. And every time I try to play it, I always inevitably go, oh yeah, I just kind of don't like how these games play. It's just, man, I do not like strings. I just don't like strings as a combo system. I find it really unintuitive and weird. I always have to like check. Like I feel it's so hard for me to lab anything. Maybe it's just a mindset thing, but I've never really. Every time I have tried to understand like how to start messing around with combos in MKX, it always just feels like too stiff and specific, and only certain strings can be special canceled and stuff, and I just don't really vibe with it. However, I did learn something new. Which is that Warlock Quan Chi is the coolest that character has ever been. Warlock is the variation where he gets access to all the portals. So, like, you do a combo, and then you end with this move where he reaches into a portal and, like, stabs the opponent in the back, and then flings them over the side, right? It's such a cool move. And he's got a couple moves like that. He's got a kick. He kicks into a portal, and it appears in front of him, like kicking towards him. It's so neat. The combos that he has are really cool. Just the neatest that character has ever been. I feel like if I actually played MKX, I would want to play a little Warlock Quan. A little Quan Chi, a little crunchy, if you know what I'm saying. But it got me thinking about Mortal Kombat and NRS games in general, and their very odd place in the fighting game community. Now, typically, you would expect, and I would say this is probably the rule with most audiences for most things, especially competitive games, that every demographic of the player base tends to grow at the same time. Like, everyone kind of grows with parity to each other. As in, you've got the surface level players, more casual people there's people who just touch people who've heard of the game, people who have touched it once or twice, people who play it kind of casually every now and again, and then you work down the ranks, down, deeper and deeper, until you hit the hardcore population of people who are, heavily invested, know all about the competitive scene. They go to tournaments, they compete, they know like players. They are actually highly invested and they're the hardcore audience. And generally, you would think that as the audience grows, in general, the casual audience, which I'll just group into a big monolith, and the hardcore audience grow as well. Generally, it always starts with the casual audience growing, right? The casual audience grows, and then they filter down, and a certain number of them will become the more entrenched players. The new players of today are the hardcore players of tomorrow. Everyone's got to start somewhere. But Mortal Kombat and NRS games don't work like that. And it's really curious. And I'm not saying this to like be just shitting on NRS, although I'm happy to. I really actually genuinely want to talk about why that is, because I think it's interesting. The way that NRS games work is that they are the most popular fighting games in general. Every time an MK, or specifically an MK, comes out, Injustice does okay. But anytime a new Mortal Kombat comes out, it is always the best-selling fighting game of the year. I believe on like the top sellers, MK is the best-selling fighting game franchise of all time. It beats out Street Fighter. It beats out Tekken. Mortal Kombat cranks out Call of Duty numbers, right? It's kind of the Call of Duty of the fighting game community. Don't want to get too ahead of myself. Of fighting games. Not necessarily the fighting game community, but of fighting games. And oddly, you would think that means that they also have one of the largest competitive scenes. But no. They have one of the smaller ones. Routinely. Every year at EVO, they have bottom 3 attendance. Unless it's like the first year of an NRS game's lifespan, in which case they tend to be a little higher. Maybe in the middle, maybe in the top 5. Maybe in the top 4. I don't remember. I don't have all the lists in front of me, and there's too many EVOs. But that's only like 1 year. Every year after that, any year after that, it drops dramatically. Like, interest falls off super hard for NRS games. And it's a problem that's been observed by people in and outside of the NRS community. They have a ton of attention at the start, and then they fall off really hard. And the level of investment just isn't there. And you don't see that for other games. Within the last 5 years, Street Fighter, Guilty Gear, Tekken have all had consistently high, like, top 3 EVO entrant numbers. Consistently. And in fact, growing. The overall attendance of EVO grows year over year. And those games, which are more niche, are growing in EVO entrants. And I think that EVO entrant numbers, it's not a perfect stat, but it is a representation of what is the most hardcore of the community. The people who are willing to travel to fucking Las Vegas or Japan to compete in a gigantic 1,000 person open bracket tournament. I'd say that's a pretty good indicator of the hardcore fan base. The data isn't perfect because you can enter multiple games at EVO, although I don't know how many people enter more than 2. And I imagine that a lot of people are just entering a single game. Well, actually, that's not true. They probably, I can imagine people entering 2, maybe 3 games, depending on, they're like, well, you're already spending a bunch on travel and hotel and stuff like that. The point is, why is there such a gap? Why is there such a fall off, and why is there such a gap between sales and hardcore representation? And I think that there's a couple reasons for that. One is that the NRS community is actually a lot younger than all of these other communities. I don't mean younger with like their actual age. I mean the scene started much later. Mortal Kombat has been around since almost immediately after Street Fighter 2. But the big difference is that Mortal Kombat abandoned arcades for a long time, for like 10 plus years. There is an arcade era of Mortal Kombat. And the thing is you can think of the arcade scene as the 90s and 2000s equivalent of those Evo entrant numbers. People who are willing to leave their house and go play games against other people and risk losing their quarter to put down money and say, I am going to bet that I'm going to get 25 cents worth of gameplay out of this against another person. That is, it's not the biggest investment, but it is kind of it is an indicator of the level of investment of a community. And games with very strong, dedicated arcade scenes are the ones that I find carry that momentum forward to the current day. It really is consistent. This is also one of the reasons that Smash Brothers has always had a severe cultural disconnect between them and the rest of the fighting game community, to the point where they're basically considered different things. A lot of people don't even consider Smash to be a fighting game. I don't know why you can't just call it a party fighting game, as if that's like an impossible combination of things. It's just a party fighting game, guys. That's cool. It's flexible. Smash never had an arcade scene because it was never on arcades. It was home console only, and that bred a certain type of community, not necessarily an inferior one, but a different one. It was one that was mainly connected via message boards, and that had a lot of like small gatherings, maybe more infrequent gatherings, a lot of maybe personal connections, like, oh, I'm going over to my friend's house, or the group of us at our college dorm are going to play Smash together, and not like I'm going to go to this place and a bunch of strangers are going to play video games together. It's a different type of culture. You learn there's different social skills and different things that are rewarded and punished in those settings. And they create different levels of investment, different types of investment. So for something like Street Fighter always had a strong arcade scene. Marvel vs. Capcom, Guilty Gear as well. Guilty Gear had the also a bit of benefit of the fact that if you were into Guilty Gear for a long time, it was very niche. If you just heard about it with Strive, it might surprise you to know Guilty Gear was a very, very pretty obscure series for the longest time. It was extremely niche. So if you were into it, you were like going over to like a fucking, there's a great Lord Knight. There's a great Lord Knight story where he's talking about going to, oh no, it's a Melty, I don't remember if it's Guilty Gear or Melty Blood. It might have been Melty Blood, but same premise essentially. So same idea of like going over to a Melty Blood tournament, and it's like some fucking guy's basement in New Jersey. There's 30 sweaty dudes in somebody's basement in New Jersey playing Melty Blood. And like that's what the community was like. And so that creates a certain like strong investment in playing the game. It's kind of part of like it's a social thing. It's kind of a lifestyle thing. Showing up to locals, it builds habits. Like when I go to my Flesh and Blood locals, I do that every week. Unless I get sick, I don't miss a week. It's just a part of my routine. I meet people and I get into the culture of the game, and that's the type of thing that builds investment. Mortal Kombat had that. They had that in the early 90s. And then after MK4, well, first of all, some people, I feel bad when I watch Ketchup and Mustard's videos on MK4 because they so earnestly appreciate it. And that's really cool. But that game is fuck That game is fucky. And I'm not gonna say it's kind of funny. I'm not gonna call it a great game. And yeah, I think it kind of did deserve the reception it got. And then they just abandoned arcades and went straight to home consoles. That had a lot of boons. A lot of ed boons, if you will. You know? They were able to focus a lot on single player content. Some of those 3D MK games from the PS2 360 era, they were great packages. They had great single player offerings. And a lot of people played those games and got invested into the world and the characters, and it really did bank on like the one of the strengths of the series, which was some really great character designs. Although the 3D era had a lot of not great ones, a lot of kind of misses, in my opinion. But again, it sort of atomizes the community. There was very rudimentary online play, and I don't imagine most people were really going online. Most people were probably playing solo, doing the arcade ladders, doing the story modes, playing with their friends and siblings. And that it causes an atomization. So the hardcore community, like, there were some people who did get together and play Mortal Kombat Deception in tournament. But it's very few people. You can find tournament footage of Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, a game fucking no one played in 2003 and 4. You can find tournament footage of that pretty easily. There's like 2 clips of MK Deception in tournament. It was just a different, like, there wasn't as much of an intensity, and it wasn't widespread enough to really, like, there wasn't enough tinder for the flame, if you will. So the community really only got going in like 2011 with MK9, when the series got rebooted and when it started back up under NRS. And again, that wasn't in arcades. That was online. That was with online play, which was now easier to do. It was viable enough that you could actually build an online community. But it's like, it feels like in so many ways the NRS community is sort of playing catch up to build like the established. There's other things actually. It's the common theme is being cut off. I'm playing with cards right now. The common thing is abrupt cutoffs and not allowing things to grow. Killing the momentum. You know, one of the ways that I think actually contributes to this, I think it's the way that they handle like characters. I think it's not just like, oh, they do the story and they always reset why are they rebooted so often? I think it's so weird. Like, okay, I mentioned Ketchup and Mustard earlier. Great MK channel. I love watching their stuff. They do these awesome videos called The Competitive History of So-and-so Character. And they just look at every iteration of a particular character from the Mortal Kombat series, and they look at what their deal was, how their moveset changed, and how strong they were in each respective game that they appeared in, how they fit into the competitive meta. They are very knowledgeable about this stuff. They do really good research. They're tapped into a lot of people who were into the competitive communities for especially these old games, which is impressive. And I think the perfect example of this is to look at Reptile. Go watch the Reptile episode that they did. You're like, oh, Reptile, he's like a reptile man. What does Reptile do? What's his play style? What is his gameplay identity? You can't answer that question. Because it just fucking changes in every single game. Dramatically. Sometimes he's a zoner. Sometimes he's like a neutral footsies-based poking character. Sometimes he's like a combo monster. Sometimes he's rush-down mix-up man. Sometimes he's like a brawler with like frame traps and stuff. Sometimes he's got set play. He goes through 100 different gameplay identities. And it's like, if I like Reptile, I have to like him. If I like Reptile in multiple games, I almost have to like him as a character. Because there's like no consistency in gameplay to get attached to. Even like, okay, people talk about Guilty Gear Strive and quote unquote strivifying characters. Now, some characters are like completely reworked. Like Ramlethal, totally different from her appearance in Exerd. But a lot of characters, like, the same basic character is there. Like, it's still preserved, basically. Soul basically plays like Soul. Leo is doing Leo things. It's a little different. His moveset's a little different. It's a different system. The game feels different, but he's basically doing Leo things. He does what you expect him to do. Potemkin plays like how you expect him to play. May plays like sort of how you expect her to play. She's, again, simplified and kind of streamlined down in Strive. But especially like a lot of the later characters, I was very pleased that Slayer does Slayer things, you know? There is a consistency there. Street Fighter characters have consistent identities. The way that they're balanced might change dramatically over the course of each iteration, but like you play Chun-Li in one game, you can kind of play Chun-Li in every game. You just got to get used to what's different about her in this one, but the basic idea is there. It's not going to be like, oh, what the fuck? If you play Sagat in one game, Sagat is basically the same in every Street Fighter game. Apparently he's quite different in 5. That's what I've heard. But Sagat he's at least still like doing Sagat things, like he's got the same moves. If I say, oh, I'm a Sub-Zero main for life, in your mind, you're like, oh, that's because he thinks that Sub-Zero is cool. Literally, you know? He likes that he's an ice ninja. You would never in a million years think, oh yeah, probably because he really clicks with Sub-Zero's gameplay identity. No, because there's nothing to latch onto. And I think that kind of hurts a certain, like, long-term player. There's this really interesting pattern I notice with NRS games of just observing them from the sidelines, where it feels like the player base has to reset every single game. Like, that didn't really have to happen with Street Fighter 6. Yeah, it was a totally different system. There was a ton of brand new characters, but you could kind of just hop in and at a basic level, just sort of play Street Fighter. And even though every Street Fighter game plays totally differently when you get really into the weeds. But like genuinely, every Mortal Kombat game plays so fucking differently. I have no idea how they do it. Like Sonic Fox is crazy. How do they do it? There's so little continuity, both with like within the community and within like the gameplay. All I see is just people who are like invested into this, and then suddenly like it feels like the rug's pulled out from under them. I think that the release cadence that NRS has traditionally gone by also hurts them a little bit. I think changing games so drastically, so often, and only giving each game like 2 years of support is actually not very good. I think that it feels nice that like that season 4 patch for Strive came out, and it felt like, oh, it feels like the developers just kind of clicked. That's kind of how every ArcSys game is they sort of fuck around for like 3 or 4 years, and then they suddenly just lock in and they go, oh, I get it now. And then they just fix the whole game in like 2 patches. And that's literally what's happened now with Strive. Like the game improved substantially in terms of playability and balance and features. Like like player base really happy with the most recent update. And that's something that you only get after like years and years of like figuring out the game and how it works. And I can't help but feel like it's kind of a disservice to the player base to just leave them behind. Like, how interesting could MKX have gotten if it had another year or two of balance passes? Or MK11 even, you know? Like, some of those games got really interesting in their final patches. Maybe you could have pushed it in that direction. MK11 didn't have custom variations until like the last 6 months, it seemed like. Maybe the last year. It was so late in development. It was crazy. It feels like, I remember when that happened and the response was like, "Oh, it feels like the game is finally done. It feels like the game's out of beta or something." That was the impression I got. And I think that all of this overall kind of leads to a lack of investment by a casual player base. If you are a casual player, you play one Mortal Kombat game and you play the next one, and it's like you got to learn a whole different thing. You can't just pick up the same character and be like, "Oh, I actually see the continuity between their gameplay. Oh, there's a community, there's an existing community with tons of like in-jokes and references and history and lore that go back 20, 30 years for me to dig into." It's all too like scattered across all of these different communities, and like the retro MK community is like a totally different thing from the NRS community, and like no one really plays the 3D games competitively. There isn't even really a convenient way to play them. It's just a mess. It's a mess of no continuity. It's kind of like Mortal Kombat's problem in its story is they keep fucking with the continuity. And I think that that's what leads to the highest selling fighting game of the year and the highest selling fighting game franchise of all time getting some of the lowest Evo entrants. Good gosh. Good golly. I'm going to go for a little bit longer because my throat's tired and I'm sleepy. I'm going to talk about some movies that I watched. So, for whatever reason, the last time Kat was over, she decided that she really wanted, she said, I was going to go make, we were hungry, so I went to go make food for us. And she goes, "All right, but when you get back, I'm going to have a surprise for you." And I was like, "All right. I hope it's not sex because I don't want the spaghetti to get cold because it's going to take me like 20-ish minutes or more to cook enough pasta for the both of us. And I really don't want it to get cold because I don't want to have to reheat it because I'd really have to reboil it and put it in the microwave. I don't want to put it in the microwave because it gets all rubbery. I hate that." Anyway, I came back and she had loaded up Caddyshack on my computer. So we watched Caddyshack from 1980. Harold Ramis's first movie, his directorial debut. This sort of ensemble comedy cast: Chevy Chase, Rodney Dangerfield, Bill Murray, a lot of SNL alumni, sort of legends in the making, coming off of SNL. Several of them relatively early in their movie careers. I believe this was Rodney Dangerfield's first movie. He was already pretty successful in the world of stand-up, and he had a very particular style that's pretty iconic to him. And the movie is basically hailed as a comedy classic, an all-time comedy classic. And I didn't think it was that funny. Sorry. You know when I start getting like too into like an objective description of the film, I'm gonna say I didn't like it. this was like an interesting experience because Caddyshack's a really odd film. It's a really weird movie. It has almost no plot. Well, it does have a plot in the strictest sense, which is that you could, if you wanted, break down the events of the film into a bullet point list. It's not like a music video or something. Honestly, a lot of music videos have more plot structure than Caddyshack does. It takes place on a hoity-toity golf course with a hoity-toity, highfalutin golfing club. Haha, club. No, but like an organization. And the caddies, the teenage caddies who work there, and the members of this club and their various hijinks. That is the best way I can describe it. The film has no traditional plot structure. It is okay. Here's why the movie's so weird. Just to like stop beating around the bush. I won't bury the lead any longer. Apparently, Caddyshack began life as an attempt at what reads to me as kind of like a coming of age, a more serious coming of age story, inspired by actual time that some of the writers spent as caddies, as teenagers in high school, and the things that they saw and the stories that they had based on these experiences. And it seems like it was supposed to be a much longer, like apparently 3 hour, sorry, I bumped my pop filter, like 3 hour long movie that was supposed to have much more, I guess, of a traditional structure or a much more intelligible structure. And the comedy aspect was just meant to be like a relief contrast from the rest of the story, which is this coming of age thing about this teenager figuring out what he wants to do with his life. And then it was just kind of this mess and it didn't work. And they were like, once they got the comedians on set, it was like way better. It was way better than whatever they'd written. So they just ad-libbed a bunch of stuff. And in the end, the film basically got cut and chopped down until it is essentially, in its final form, a collection of skits. Scenes do not flow one into the other, with very little exception. Plot points have next to no, they will be introduced, characters will be introduced, and they have almost no bearing on anything that happens later. There's a scene where the main character sleeps with the daughter of the guy who owns the country club, and he walks in on them and he tries to kill the teenager with a golf club. And, you know, they had like a good relationship before, and now he's like, I'm gonna fucking kill you. And then the next scene is just him going, hey, what if we were cool? And the guy's like, yeah, let's be cool. And that's the resolution of that. And then near the end of the movie, the teenager guy decides, actually, fuck you, I'm gonna play against you in this golfing match. Like this money match. Oh, okay, why? I have no fucking idea. It doesn't matter. It was probably in a cut plot point. He probably had some character arc. The main character, like, in this, he cheats on it. He has a girlfriend. He cheats on her with this daughter character. Never comes up. Never a thing. His girlfriend is like, I'm pregnant and I'm upset about it. And he's like, well, whatever, like, you want to do. And she's like, fuck you, I fucking hate you. And then 2 scenes later, she's like, guess what? I'm actually not pregnant. That's literally the line. She goes, it turns out I'm not pregnant. And then he's like, oh, sick, actually. Let's go. And nothing, that's it. It is literally 2 meaningless scenes. It is a plot line that lasts 2 scenes the second of which cancels out the first one and means nothing. This is the movie. Well, it's the movie when it's not being like a comedy. The film is really carried by the humor, and it all hinges on whether or not you find it funny. For my money, like I said, I just don't find it that funny. I can't remember a single joke I got a real laugh at. Like, I had some chuckles. There's some amusing moments. The dialogue, I would say, is actually really good. It's that classic, sharp Harold Ramis dialogue that you see in, like, Ghostbusters. That sharp, witty dialogue that's very charming and memorable. It's highly quotable. You can see that already in Caddyshack. It's just like, he's really good at that micro, you know? But just the overall structure that it's in, you know, maybe needed to get refined. And it's funny because I read, like, quotations from the film. And the quotes are, like, I feel like if I read it in a book, I would find it funny. Because I feel like in my mind, if I'm reading it, I'm kind of imagining, I'm filling in the rest of what it sounds like and what the delivery is, and because I find it amusing, I'm kind of making it the rest of it funny in my head. But for some reason, when the characters themselves deliver the lines, I think it's just like the delivery. It's like the delivery and the pacing, something about it just really doesn't work for me. And it might be a generational thing. There is definitely a generational gap with this movie. Using the word gap a lot today. But there is one. I was talking to my dad about it because he was like, "Oh, it's a classic." This is a very dad-uncle movie. This is a dad and uncle movie. And that's not a bad thing. It's just, when I see Rodney Dangerfield going off, I go, man, my uncle's never mentioned this movie. I know he would love this shit. I know this is his shit. I was talking to my dad about it, and the way he described it, the reason it was so impactful at the time with his age group, and this is like 1980, so this came out when he was like a sophomore in high school, was that, so he's like 15 when this comes out, is that it was kind of just really boundary pushing for the time. It wasn't like stuffy. It was acknowledging things like drugs and sex. There's like a totally just, oh, okay, well, I guess we're having a sex scene now with full nudity. It's just, okay, sure, it's happening. But like, it's there, and at the time that was very like, whoa, what? This is crazy. I can't believe that this is in a movie. And it had several comic actors who were sort of hip at the time, popular. And again, it was like the boundary pushing aspect of the subject matter. And I mean, it was so weird. It was so different. It was kind of like not your daddy's movie in any respect. It's just this random assortment of skits where they're saying and doing crazy shit. And that was really mind-blowing at the time. Now, I don't want to chalk up all of the movie's reputation to pure nostalgia, although I'm sure plenty of it comes from nostalgia. I can understand why somebody would find many of the jokes funny. Again, I think a lot of the dialogue is actually very clever. It's just not, like, funny to me. I'm just never laughing at it. It's kind of like when I see, like, Simpsons clips, and I never really laugh. I just go, yeah, that is clever. That's a clever thing. and again, it might just be like, I don't find Chevy Chase very funny in this movie. Something about his delivery, maybe it's the cocaine, but something about his delivery is just sort of like he's not there. I don't know. I always got this kind of like dissociation. I always feel like every time he's on screen, he's just dissociating. Like he's not all the way there. And again, he's probably on cocaine in every shot. So might not be that off, but I don't know. I could never get into his performance. Bill Murray is, I'm not a big fan of just like the dumb, silly voice character. I don't know. It just doesn't really work for me. It's not a very deep character. I don't have a very deep opinion of it. I actually do like, well, I like some of Rodney Dangerfield's stand-up. I'm not super familiar. I haven't watched tons of it, but I've seen clips of it, and I actually do think that he's, of comedians of that style, man, he really is like, it feels like he's the best one. I watch his stand-up and I think there's definitely a billion guys who tried to do the Rodney Dangerfield thing, and none of them had the charisma or the sense of timing or delivery that he had. It is so easy to do that shit and be hokey and like hokey and hacky, but he really sells it. He feels like a total caricature, but from what I understand, he was just kind of like that, because it was like, in that sense, I suppose his great strength was his honesty, that he really just was that guy. And he gets on camera and he does the Rodney Dangerfield thing. And I go, okay, yeah. It's a little much. I don't know. I don't know why. I'm just not getting into it. Kat loves Rodney Dangerfield. I read something that was like, if you like Rodney Dangerfield, if you like, specifically in this movie, if you like Rodney Dangerfield, if you like Bill Murray, and you like the Gopher, you'll like the movie. And she loves all that shit. I will admit, I do like the Gopher. He's cute. He's a cute, fuzzy little guy. The plot with him and Bill Murray is funny. The Bill Murray stuff is so funny, especially because it's like, it's so odd, because in the sense that the movie is a collection of skits, Bill Murray sticks out because his plot line has almost nothing to do, like he never interacts with anyone else except for one scene where they basically forced him and Chevy Chase into a room, and it's almost like you're just watching him doing an SNL, like a repeating SNL character, but instead of watching like a compilation of all of the appearances, like all the skits back to back, with that one with Carl Spackler, the assistant groundskeeper, they're like spread out over the course of a 90-minute movie. Is it 90 minutes? How long is it? Yeah, about 90 minutes. Oh, about 100 minutes. Actually, maybe Ted Knight might be the funniest. I think he had some of the best stuff in the movie. He had like the most lines that got me the closest to actually laughing. The one about the gas chambers is pretty good. Yeah, I don't know. I think it might it's like the delivery on a lot of the dialogue, and maybe the way that it's edited, and just the pacing, because so much of it is just ad-libbed. So they weren't really like, I don't know, it feels like they weren't really set up to capture the jokes in a certain way, or maybe it was difficult to cut around them. I mean, so much of the movie was being thrown out anyway. It's just something about it feels off to me. Like it never really hits. It just never had a strong impact. I understand why people like Caddyshack. I just don't. I'm not a big fan. I wouldn't say I liked it very much. Although it's like decently amusing for most of its runtime. Yeah. It's okay. Maybe check it out if you're curious. If you want to, it's not your average movie and it's not your average comedy. It could just be a generational thing, but Caddyshack did not really work for me. On to two movies that I actually quite enjoyed. I watched Black Christmas from 1974. So this is one of those... Black Christmas is a Oh God, my voice. It's a pre-Halloween slasher film. And I enjoy that small period of the pre-Halloween slashers quite a bit. This for me is up there. I like this movie a lot. See, when I just jump straight into what I feel about it, it's always positive. I always, if I have like a negative impression of a movie, I know a lot of people like. I always preface it with explaining the film. But I liked Black Christmas a lot. I think it holds up really well. It's got a great cast, great premise, really interesting, very oddly tasteful, and I think respectful to the audience. What do I mean by that? So Black Christmas is a slasher movie, but it's from that, like, it's not like a Friday the 13th where it's like a kill a minute slasher, where it's about how crazy the kills are. There are some crazy kills. There's a couple of like very evocative imagery. But it's much more slow. It's much slower paced. There's long stretches of the movie with no violence to speak of. It's just character building and setting up the atmosphere and what's been going on. And then it gradually, like once you hit the halfway mark, especially, it starts ramping up and up and up once you get to the actual Christmas night. It takes place over 2 days, Christmas Eve and Christmas night. Mainly in a sorority house on some college, and there's all the sorority girls, and they've been getting these creepy, perverted phone calls from some mysterious caller. A lot of this movie revolves around landline telephones. So that gives it sort of, I think, in the modern day, a quaint aspect, but it's such a cool. There's some really cool stuff done with the element of telephones. Talk about a film that could not be made. Actually, I guess you could have made. Landlines were around a while before this, but you could not make it in the same way today. Although apparently they tried to in 2019, and apparently it sucked. But whatever. So they get these creepy, perverted phone calls. And they're having their Christmas Eve party where all the girls, and there's a couple guys there, and everyone's having fun. And some people are leaving for the holidays. And suddenly they get this phone call. And mind you, before this, you get an idea of what's about to happen. You cut to the outside of the house, and it's like this snowy scene. It's dark. It's at night. They're outside of the house, and it's a POV shot of someone just walking around the sorority house. And it's kind of shaky and clearly like a shoulder-mounted or chest-mounted camera. I believe it was shoulder-mounted. first person POV, and they're just walking around, and they walk around the windows, and they're getting a view inside, and they're peering in, and you never see outside of the POV for this whole sequence. Occasionally you'll cut back to the inside, but anytime you go outside to where this mysterious character is, you're always seeing it through their eyes. And before I had put the pieces together, that this person was the caller, the first word that because these POV sequences are so engrossing, the word that came to mind was deviance. Just something like, it feels like I'm in the shoes of somebody who is in a place that they shouldn't be, you know? I used to, for a personal anecdote, I used to live by this public high school of several years ago. And I would, in the summertime, I would take a lot of night walks. And I would walk down to the high school, and you could just walk onto the campus. There was no gate or anything. And I would just walk around there at night. And I guess it was, I don't know if legally it counts as trespassing, because technically it's public property. But I just kind of did it for fun, because I thought it would be, I don't know, I just wanted to see what was over there. I was curious. And I was never like gonna do anything bad or steal anything or break and enter. I never actually I tried to go inside. I just walked around on this big open campus that they had with all these buildings and stuff. You could just walk around there. Nothing was fenced off. They had like a field, like a sports field, and all these places, and there was like multiple levels. You could walk up the stairs to this outdoor, like this exterior, what is it, like a bridge or something, like corridor that joins two buildings and stuff. And I would just walk around there, and I was never doing anything illegal that I knew of. But obviously I knew that if someone saw me, they would be very suspicious and probably kind of alarmed at what I was doing there. So there was kind of, I remember just part of the excitement for me, and I haven't done this in so long. I haven't done this in years. Part of the excitement for me of doing it was beyond curiosity. There wasn't a sort of jolt in the idea that I was kind of doing something that I knew would be sort of alarming, that I kind of wasn't supposed to be doing. And occasionally somebody would actually be there who was supposed to be there, like some kind of a worker who was putting something in, I don't know, maybe for a summer camp, or people who were working on something, or faculty who were going in and out for whatever reason, and they were there in the evening time. And at one time there was like these people. One time there was it was a theater or a sports practice or something like that. I think theater. And suddenly there was like, oh God, there's like parents walking around. And I'm like fucking hiding in a corner. And I'm walking up to like a sort of up this sort of obscure stairway, trying not to be seen, and like camping out and waiting for them to go and seeing when I can leave. And I didn't want to be seen. And that kind of, that sense that I'm somewhere that I really shouldn't be, and that I'm trying not to be seen. I was doing real life thief. And these POV shots kind of reminded me of that. Obviously, I wasn't trying to do anything like this character. But yeah, it was that same feeling that was evoked in a movie. I've never had that in a movie before. I feel like I'm back there wandering around that high school, trespassing, trying to remain unseen. And he finds this trellis that's up against the wall, and he climbs up, and he finds his way into the attic, and I'm going to be spoiling big parts of the movie, so spoiler alert, go watch it. It's awesome. It's a really good movie. And they get this call downstairs. And it's like this mysterious caller, and he's saying these really vulgar, disgusting things like, I'm gonna fuck you fucking cunt and you pussy. Sounded like Cartman there. And then the sort of one of the head honcho, one of the alpha females of the group takes the phone, and she starts talking back to him and making fun of him. And eventually she gets kind of just worn thin by his shtick. And she says, oh, fuck off. And then suddenly he just stops in the middle, like, I'm just, I'm gonna, and just tons of these weird noises, and then he just stops dead, and he goes, I'll kill you, and hangs up. And there's like and the whole group has this sort of, they were obviously pretty put off by the weird sex stuff, but something about the shift, the abrupt shift, and that really straightforward, no funny voice threat is kind of like, ooh, it strikes them in a much more sobering way. And then they just kind of move on. And this leads into the first kill of the film, when the career virgin, as some of the other characters, the other girls describe her, the other women, goes back to her room, and this mysterious figure is hiding in her closet and strangles her to death, and then drags her body up into the attic, and almost like he wraps her head. It's a very striking, chilling image of her whole head wrapped in plastic. This plastic cover in a rocking chair in the window. Very creepy. And her disappearance kind of spurs some character action over the course of the next day and stuff, and this missing persons case, and then the bodies start to pile up. And what is interesting about the film, I would say, this is the subtext of the film, straight up, is that the movie really reads to me as it being, and I'm not the only one, is that it's okay, this might sound weird, but in the language of the film, murder is like rape. Murder is like sexual assault. There is a deviant, perverse, sexually... sexual connotation to the killings that happen. It starts out with the very first one. The killer is the one leaving these messages and these making these calls to the house, and he is you never see him, but he is this pervert, like there's this pervert quality, like fixation that he has. And then his first kill, I don't think it's any coincidence that she is like this good girl virgin. It's almost like this symbolic, symbolic destruction of her innocence or something like that by her killing. He has this obsession throughout the movie with babies and mother and women and something like that, and it's reflected in this serial killer compulsion to kill women. I don't think he kills a single man in the whole. No, he doesn't kill a single man in the whole movie. he just takes their bodies, and he doesn't just like dump the bodies. He has to like pose them. The second kill is, unfortunately, a character who I loved, the house mother, Mrs. Mack, something like that. She's great. She's really funny. There's a surprising amount of humor, at least in the early parts of the film, that do a bit to break up the tension before stuff starts getting really serious. And she is the second kill. Fucking on a hook. He throws a hook. He swings a hook into her mouth. And then he poses the both of them up in the attic. And then later, when he starts going down into the house proper to kill the other girls in their beds, he poses them almost like dolls in their beds, and like as if he's preserving them. Like he took the effort to pose them and put them into these like he drapes one of them over the other. And there's this really uncomfortable sexual element to the murders. The sort of main character, she's the last girl of the movie, so she's kind of meant to be the through line. Her name is Jess, and she talks to her boyfriend early in the film, and she lets him know that she is pregnant and she doesn't want to keep the baby. This was an accident, it was an unintended pregnancy. And her boyfriend, who is this musician, is very upset with her. He does not want her to have the abortion, and he is imploring her, "What have you ever thought about me?" Like she's not the one having the baby. This causes like this real breakdown in his psyche. And he... Oh, my neck. He has this very possessive quality. Like he comes to see her over the course of the next few days, or over a few more times, and he's just begging her to think of him and to prioritize his wants over hers, and to not like to keep the pregnancy. And he's sort of the red herring. Peter is his name. He's sort of the red herring. His deteriorating mental state, this kind of state of mania that he goes into. He totally flunks his musical exam to enter into the conservatory or to get some kind of entry into some program or something. He fucks up his audition. And this like totally just sends him into a total tailspin. And you think that it's him throughout the film. And there's a bunch of really clever... This is probably like this is a great red herring film. Because I was convinced that it was him. And I was like, okay, why is the movie pretending like it's not him anymore? Why is the movie pretend... Okay, they're leading up to... They're leading up to it clearly being Peter being the one... He's got some kind of weird, maybe an alter ego thing. Maybe it's like a Norman Bates situation where he has this kind of persona that he kills as, or it's going to be something like that. And his obsession, he has this kind of like lustful thing going on. And then the idea of the abortion is what sends him over the edge. And then, so like you go through the whole movie, and it starts ramping up. Oh my god, dude! Like, I'm gonna be honest. I always thought that the call is coming from inside the house was from Scream. It might be in Scream. I always thought it was from Scream. I didn't realize that it came from Black Christmas. That is such a great scene. They bug the phone in the house so that they can so that they can track the caller who has been, they're pretty sure is responsible for the disappearance or has some connection to the first girl's disappearance. Also, I should mention, when talking about, there is definitely like an element of sexism in the movie that it acknowledges. All the main characters are women, but when they go to the local police with this problem that they've been having, this harassment issue, and the police don't, the lieutenant doesn't take them seriously. He goes, oh well, that's just a prank. It's probably just one of your boyfriends playing a prank. And when they go come in with the to report that that girl is missing, he says, she's probably just shacking up with her boyfriend in some cabin. And he doesn't care. He just dismisses it. And every time he does, he is also centering men, not even a particular man, just men. He just imagines that there's some man involved, and he's the explanation for it, and he's got a reason for it. It's only when another man or other men push the issue that he actually is spurred to action. The boyfriend of the girl who goes missing, and who genuinely is like really upset that they don't take it seriously. And then eventually like the chief finds out about all these weird happenings all swirling around the same time and place. And then he goes and is like, dude, come on, what the fuck? So it takes like another man to basically make it a legitimate issue for him. So then they go and they bug the phone, and progress starts actually being made. They have a bit of a lifeline. So they're going to track the call. And there's this thing where it takes a certain amount of time to find where the call is coming from, because the guy literally has to be at the phone company and running back and forth to check where this is coming from and what line and what house. And they can never get the caller on the line for long enough to actually trace the call. And eventually there's all these fake outs, and they're like, oh well, it can't be Peter because he was here when the call happened. And then eventually you've got this great scene where the caller is on the line just long enough for them to get to trace the call, and they find out the call is coming from inside the house. And the moment you realize it is like, because now you know it and she doesn't, and they're trying to relay the information to her. And the chief finds this out, and he calls the deputy, because the deputy is the one at the station, and he has the direct line to the house. And he's like, do not tell her that the killer is in the house. Just tell her to leave the house. And she doesn't know that the other two girls are dead. And she finds out she is like, why do I have to leave the house? And the fucking stupid ass deputy is like, the fucking killer's in the house. The calls are coming from inside the house. That moment is so great. When she realizes that, and she could have gotten out. That's what's so tragic about it. She could have gotten out of the house safely and probably escaped the killer. But she chose to do the brave thing and go back for her friends, who she didn't know were tragically already dead. And in doing so, almost basically seals her own fate, because she goes back, she finds the bodies, the killer ambushes her in this great scene where, again, you never see him. I find it interesting also that when he catches her, he's like up on the staircase, and he grabs her by the hair. Again, just this slight sexually dominant imagery of like grabbing her by the hair before she escapes into the basement. And at this point I'm like, yeah, it's Peter. It's obviously Peter. And Peter, honestly, dude's acting weird as fuck. He's like stomping around outside the house. He sees Jess through the window, and he like breaks through the glass to hop in. Jess freaks out. She stabs him to death with a fire poker, and then the police eventually find both of them in the basement. You think at first she's dead, but she's alive. She killed him in self-defense, which she believed was self-defense. They chalk it up to the fact that Peter was the killer, and Jess is in a state of essentially catatonic shock. They say she's probably not going to wake up for 36 hours. She won't be of any use to talk to for 36 hours. So they're just going to leave her in the bed, and everything's cleaned up. The police leave for a bit. They have a guy stationed outside to make sure that no one comes into the house. Everyone leaves. She's left in the sorority house. And then I should mention that throughout the film, the attic has been the serial killer's base of operations. That's been his hiding spot, because no one ever goes up into the attic. And there is great tension every time you see the attic door open. The door in the ceiling open. And now you're standing on this, you're left on this shot of Jess laying in bed with no one around. And the shot hangs on her for a while. And then like the lights go off. And it's just hanging there for a long time. And you don't know why. And you're going, why are we here still? And then the camera starts moving. And it moves out of the room and down the hall and slowly, step by step, over to the corner, and then pans up to the door in the ceiling. And I'm sitting there, I'm going, no way. No. And the door slowly opens. And then you cut to the outside, which is the same as the establishing shot that began the movie. And the phone starts ringing as the credits start rolling over the footage. And you're like, no way. No fucking way. It's such a good twist ending. It's such a good twist. Because then I was putting it together and I was going, oh yeah. It must be, I guess you never directly put together that the phone is in the attic, but it must be. And the one piece of information that disproves that disqualifies Peter from being the killer is that, well, actually that might not have been it. I was going to say, if all the calls came from the attic, then the first call that they get could not have been from the killer, because Jess calls Peter later that actually, oh yeah, no. I was like, oh, well, he's, she hasn't seen him in a few days. But actually that still works for the red herring. He could have just been hiding in the attic. Although I don't know why. Oh no, yeah, because he calls her. Yeah, no caller ID. So you just got a ring, and then whoever picks up. Yeah, because he calls the house when he wants to talk to her in the first scene of the movie. So actually, like, Peter being the killer is set up perfectly for the whole movie. You don't quite put it together. You don't have all the information until a decent leg through. But also the interpretation that he is not the killer, which is the accurate interpretation, is equally viable based on all the info that you get. Peter's just also acting weird. Good thing for the killer. Yeah, what a good movie. And you know what's funny is the director, since the film came out, or the writer, Roy Moore, has almost seemingly like tried to debunk any interesting reading of the film, like any of the feminist elements or the allusions to like sexual assault, any gender relations stuff, the fact that like the red herring villain is the possessive boyfriend who doesn't want his girlfriend to get an abortion, like all these elements. He has just been like, oh yeah, no, it was just like a silly horror movie. And in fact, he has this whole he's just go, oh yeah, he has this thing. He gave this interview where he was like, oh yeah, the abortion stuff was just to give the characters something to talk about in between all the killing. And I'm like, man, you can't put all this stuff in such close proximity to each other and just expect there to be nothing. Death of the author, man. I think that, come on, dog. I'm not saying that I have the more correct interpretation. I'm saying I have a way more interesting interpretation, and I like mine more. It's a great movie, great cinematography. I love how it takes place over the course of 2 days. It's honestly just like a night. It's like a day and a quarter practically, because it starts on Christmas Eve night, and ends on Christmas night. Really good ass movie. Go watch Black Christmas, known at some point as Silent Night, Evil Night. Apparently, they released it in the US as Silent Night, Evil Night in theaters for a while because they were worried that audiences would think that a movie called Black Christmas was like a Tyler Perry movie. Which honestly, obviously before Tyler Perry, but like a blaxploitation movie. And honestly, it like, I looked it up. I am amazed that Tyler Perry does not have a movie called Black Christmas. Come on, man. What are you doing? What are you even doing? Go watch Black Christmas with Olivia Hussey and Keir Dullea, or Dooley, and Margot Kidder, and a bunch of other people that aren't listed in the stars section on the IMDb page. Black Christmas. Oh, and you can watch it on YouTube for free with ads, wink wink. Ad blocker works on that stuff. You can just watch movies with no ads. And finally, Pin from 1988, a movie fucking no one's heard of. This is the reason no one's heard of this movie is actually kind of interesting. So Pin is a Canadian picture. It is a psychological horror drama thing. And it was supposed to be distributed, and I guess it was distributed, by New World Pictures. Now, New World Pictures in the late 80s were kind of in the middle of going out of business. So they were very selective with what they actually chose to release in theaters. So they released Heathers around this time, and that got a theatrical release because they were like, yeah, this can make some money back. Pin, on the opposite end, tested very poorly with audiences. And so at the last minute, despite having things like a theatrical poster ready and marketing materials and stuff like that, they pulled the theatrical distribution and released it straight to video. So the movie is fairly obscure. It's picked up a bit of a cult following since, because it's pretty interesting and it's kind of neat and fun and a little bit cheesy in some ways. But it's got a lot of cool stuff going on. It's very hard. It's very hard to find. I don't think there is a high quality rip of the movie. You can just watch this for free, re-upload it on YouTube, but only in like 360p. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a Blu-ray. There's not an official Blu-ray. There's no real high quality scans. I'm guessing the VHS. I don't know if the VHS is just low quality or whatever, but yeah, I would like to see an actual nice restoration of the film. So what is Pin about? Pin is based on a book, and you can kind of tell because it's got a bit of a book structure to it. Pin begins with, it takes place, I want to say in Canada, in a sort of nice, affluent-ish community with two young children, the older brother Leon and the younger sister Ursula. Their father is a pediatrician with his own clinic or practice in the area. And he is this kind of, they have this weird home life. Their dad is this kind of distant, cold academic type. He doesn't display a lot of affection, especially not towards Leon. Ursula gets a little bit, but Leon is kind of all business with his dad. The mom's not awesome either. She is physically abusive. She believes in corporal punishment, let's say. She basically immediately jumps to slapping her kids if they say anything out of line. Like, Leon gives her a little bit of back talk and she just slaps him across the face, which is a great way to teach your kids how to deal with emotions, is just immediately jump to violence. I'm sure that this won't have any ramifications in the future. In their father's office, he has this anatomically accurate rubber dummy nicknamed Pin, short for Pinocchio, which you learn is because supposedly he never told a lie. I think that like Ursula named him that. You get a little detail later in the movie. When I say anatomically accurate, I mean Pin is a, anatomically accurate model of the human body, but only like the muscular level. Basically, Pin looks like a skinned human with very realistic eyes and teeth. And let me tell you, I fucking hate looking at him. Whatever. I hate looking at Pin. It is so unsettling. Everything just looks too tight. It looks too tight and creepy and uncanny. There is this like plastic, mostly opaque layer of plastic sort of skin on the outside to keep everything, I guess, protected. Keep the actual dummy protected. That's its outer layer, and it's so creepy looking. It is so creepy looking. I hate looking at Pin. But their dad uses Pin as like a teaching tool. So what he does is it's a teaching educational tool for both his own children and the children that he takes care of who are his patients. So he uses Pin as this character via ventriloquism. He will throw his voice to make it seem like Pin is talking, and he does this kind of weird, I can't even really imitate it. This kind of weird voice. Who does the voice of Pin? It's some actor. Oh, who does the voice of Pin? I don't remember. I don't even think he's in the credits. He's like an uncredited role for some reason. But it's this creepy, kind of creepy. Oh, Jonathan Banks. What was he in? Oh, it's fucking Kid Named Finger. He's Pin. That's why I was like remembering he was a notable Kid Named Finger from Breaking Bad is Pin, if you can believe it. Right. So he speaks in this sort of creepy voice, but I guess the kids like it, and he basically just uses it to teach children about, I don't know, biology, like, why does your tummy feel like that? Or why are your bones like this? Why is this and that? And he does this with his own kids, and it's kind of like this fun character that he plays. Even though Pin is creepy as fuck, it's this sort of fun time for the kids. And it really represents, especially for Leon, the only moments of warmth or connection with his father. The only really kind of charming, childlike moments with his father is when he's speaking to Pin. I'm sure this won't have any ramifications in the future. So, some weird stuff happens when Leon is a kid. He sees the nurse. I'm gonna spoil some of the movie too. This movie too. I love spoilers. He sees the nurse fucking the doll at night. He like sneaks in to talk to Pin on his own time. And he sees the nurse sneak in and like, ooh, what if it's anatomically accurate, you say? And she has sex with the dummy, which Leon cannot help but stand behind the curtain and watch in this kind of horror, as he doesn't really understand what's going on. It kind of fucks up his whole perception of sex and women and relationships. It's almost like a molestation event, but like secondhand. It's a very weird scene. Jump forward to them as teenagers in high school, late high school. Leon is about to graduate, and Ursula is like a sophomore. Yeah, I think she's like a sophomore. And they've gone in fairly different directions. Leon's this really kind of uptight young Republican style, like preppy guy, but he doesn't really have any friends. He's like a nerdy prep guy. He doesn't really want to leave town. He just kind of wants to stay in the area. Ursula is the total opposite. She's got friends, and she's got boyfriends, and she is having sex when she's 15, and she gets pregnant. Another pregnancy plot, just like Caddyshack. So here's the real turning point of the film. Ursula tells Leon that she's pregnant. She's freaking out about it. She doesn't know what to do. She's coming to him for advice. Leon is like, do we tell Dad? Do we tell, like, okay, Dad and Mom are gonna find out anyway. Or at least Dad. Because even if we go to a doctor, and they advise an abortion, and if you want to get an abortion, which you probably should when you're 15, Dad's gonna find out because, doctors talk. Of course he's gonna find out that happened. So eventually they have to go to Dad, but she is really scared. She does not want to tell her dad, obviously. So Leon suggests, why don't we talk to Pin? Because Pin has never lied. Pin never lies to us. And Ursula's like, are you serious? okay, and he takes it pretty seriously. So she follows him, and that night they sneak into the dad's office at his practice, and they find Pin in the office, and Leon starts trying to talk to Pin, and Ursula's like, this is really dumb. And then obviously Pin is not speaking because Pin is not alive. And then Leon starts doing the voice. He starts doing the ventriloquism and speaking, quote unquote, to Pin. And Ursula is like, this is weird. And Pin says, quotes, to Leon that Ursula needs to tell their dad about it, and that he'll handle it. And Leon goes, see what I told you? Pin agrees with me. And she's like, you don't really believe, and he's like dead serious that Pin just spoke to them, and that this was a very special moment because Pin only spoke to them previously when their father was around. That's what he would tell them. He would say, oh, Pin only talks when I'm around. Obviously, that's how to keep the illusion up for the kids. And Ursula has kind of grown out of this, obviously, but Leon is still a hardcore believer in this childish view. And so they go to the dad. He is obviously unhappy, but he to keep it quiet under wraps. They don't tell the mom, and he performs the abortion. And after this, they kind of readjust to living a normal life again. Obviously, it's a big lesson for Ursula. It's a big life experience. Leon keeps talking to Pin. He keeps sneaking into the office after hours to talk to Pin by himself. And then one night, his parents, they're on their way to a conference, and the dad has to forget something at the office, so he has to come back. He finds Leon talking to Pin, and he is like, what the fuck is going on? What the fuck what is happening? So he grabs Pin out of the chair and is like, I'm gonna take this. I do not like you. This is fucking weird, dude. And he's like, go out the side entrance. Your mother is waiting outside. I don't want her to see you like this. He is immediately like, something's wrong. So he takes Pin and he puts it in the back seat, and he puts a cover over it. He puts like a sheet over the dummy. And the mom is like, I don't like the dummy. I don't like that thing. It creeps me out. And the dad is like, it's fine. We gotta go. So they're driving, and they're stressed out. The dad is distracted. He's like, what the fuck is going on with my son? And they're kind of hitting this. You can tell what's about to happen. But as it's ramping up, and they're speeding up, and they hit a bump here and there, Pin, for whatever reason, in the seat, like they hit a turn, and Pin was on its side. The dummy was on its side, and Pin like sits up. It's really weird. It's really creepy. And then the sheet falls off of its form, and the mother sees the eyes looking at her through the rear view mirror, and she screams, and the dad takes a turn, and they fucking get into a car accident. They veer off the road and they crash. Both of them die. And Pin is returned, I guess, to the office. They take ownership of it, or the family gets it. And Leon and Ursula are left to basically kind of figure things out for themselves. The aunt wants to try to stay with them. That doesn't last very long. The rub of the movie, the hook is, okay, I feel like the marketing and what you might get out of it's all about expectations. It's all about expectations. If you go into the movie thinking that the tension, the suspense is going to come from the question of whether or not Pin is alive, you will be sorely disappointed. Pin is not alive. The movie makes that very clear. It is not alive. It's not a real person. It is just an anatomical dummy that Leon believes is alive. The actual suspense is, how far is Leon willing to go to preserve his fantasy? It actually reminds me a lot of Tender Loving Care, with like the whole small number of characters in a house. Most of it takes place in one location in a house, and there is a medical, like there's a doctor character, and psychology is an aspect of it. There's a fixation on a doll, and sort of trying to a fixation that manifests. It's like Leon clearly is using Pin as a surrogate for his own father, and almost like a potential, a need, an unfulfilled desire of what he wanted his childhood to be more like. And what the fuck? I just got like a bunch of buzzes. What he wanted his childhood to be like. After a car crash. That was another element in TLC. Curious. And that hole in your psychology, that hole in your heart, manifesting in the form of this fixation on a doll, something that represents something else that you're imprinting onto. How far is he willing to go to carry, to fulfill, to satisfy this fantasy and this impression of things? How much, like, he really wants control over things. He wants control over his life. He wants total freedom, but only for him. He wants to control his sister. He doesn't like her going out with other guys. He writes weird poetry about a character, and like it's from the perspective of a character, but it's the character is like raping his own sister, and it's like, this guy's got issues. I wonder if this is representative of him feeling like he needs to control his sister forcibly. There's a bunch of stuff. The movie takes a lot of turns. I will say the strong points are, I personally found the psychological element really interesting. I think that the writing of the characters was pretty interesting. I love when I can really dig into the actual mindset and psychology of characters in a story. That's very rewarding for me, and I like following those kinds of plots and learning more about them. The performances are actually really good across the board. Everyone's very convincing. Leon does a good job. Who's the guy for Leon? It's David Hewlett, who is in what is he known as? He's in Shape of Water. That's what Kat knew him from. She'd never heard of this movie. She was curious. Who plays Ursula? Cynthia Preston. She is in... She's Zelda in the animated Zelda series? Really? That's funny. She's the princess in Excuse Me, Princess. Huh. Oh, she still gets work. Good for her. Everyone does a really good job with the small cast of the small cast. The cinematography is fine. It's perfectly serviceable. It's nothing special. It feels a little bit made for TV, but it does its job. I think that with maybe a more intense director, this could have been an even cooler picture. The big problem, if there's any problem with the movie, I'm gonna say honestly, it's the soundtrack. The soundtrack's really goofy. It's really cheesy. for as subtle as many aspects of the movie are, the soundtrack is really like overblown and over dramatic and in your face in parts where I think it should have been either absent or very, very restrained. There's a scene where Leon finds Ursula outside the school prom, just getting down and dirty in a car in the parking lot, feet away from like a ton of people, not giving a fuck. So, and he opens the door and he grabs the guy that she's fucking and he throws him on the ground and starts like kicking him, and like it's this really intense scene, like this real like violent this violent side of Leon, and the music is just like, and it's like, why is the music like this, man? I looked up the composer, and he basically only does like made for TV movies. It really felt like that. It's probably the weakest aspect of the movie, in the fact that it's the one that most takes away from the movie. But it's not like too prevalent. It's not like ruining every scene. Actually, there are a couple cool pieces of score. There's like one that uses some more electronic, like whooshy sounds of like distortion and stuff. And again, it is a little overdone, but it's at least different enough sounding. It's very particular. It's like this like really grimy digital rumbling noise, like synth rumble. That's it's probably a little too much, but it's at least not so cliched sounding that it's interesting. But definitely the weakest part of the movie. But yeah, Pin. I can see why this is a cult classic. It's definitely a cool movie and definitely underappreciated in its time, just because of the weird nature of its distribution. I honestly, this probably would not have made a lot of money at the box office. I'll be honest. It might have been the right move, but it is a cool movie. And if you're into this style of psychological horror films, more of kind of like a horror thriller with a strong emphasis on the relationships between the characters, not a ton of action, but some good creepy scenes, genuinely. It's definitely worth checking out. Again, totally free on YouTube in kind of crappy quality, but hey, what can you do? And with that, I'm going to draw this to a close. I want to lay down and rest my voice. Ay caramba. If you've been listening this far, thank you for listening to me ramble. I have been Tygan. Go check out the most recent video on Myst. I am well underway working on the next video. You should see it fairly soon. And check out my Patreon to support me. I also have a coffee if you want to make something more like a one-time donation. If you have a comment, if you have a question, please leave it down in the comments below. Feel free to leave it down in the comments below, but please phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. Thank you so much. Bye.